So I was working on a scene today about 3 characters in a room. 2 of them are brother and sister, and the third one is an observer. And the girl has been possessed by a demon, and that demon is forced out of her momentarily, and the brother is able to speak to her for the first time in years, rather than talking to the demon. Kind of a scene that, in a sense, can be very boring because nothing is happening. It's more about the emotion and the feel and the information that the characters are going to exchange that affects the plot. But it got me thinking about action versus feeling or emotion, and how those 2 things can play against each other or help each other. So for instance, a lot of films focus on the action. What are the characters doing? If you think of Jason Bourne or James Bond or any of the Marvel movies, they tend to be very focused on what the characters are doing. And that's fine, but if you have no internal conflict going on, it can get very repetitive and it can get very dull. But on the other hand, if it's all about internal emotions, if it's just characters emotionally navel-gazing, it gets very boring. Those type of novels are generally the literary kind that you're forced to read in a college course somewhere, but you never reread. There needs to be a combination of the 2, right? You want characters who feel things, that gives them some depth, that makes them feel real, but you also want them to go do something. You know, one of the examples I think of comes from the Marvel films, and in part it's a very accessible example because most of you have seen it. And it's also a great example of how adding a little bit of internal conflict, some feeling, some emotion to the characters, it heightens what they're doing and makes it more meaningful. And the example is when Thanos kills Gamora in order to get the Soul Stone. Soul Gem? Whatever. His internal conflict, this is his daughter, adopted, but he loves her, he doesn't want to kill her, he cares about her, he's trained her, he has all this emotional investment in her. The writers showing that conflict creates so much more interest as the audience, so much more emotional investment. You feel something about it. And so that's a great example of how adding some internal conflict, some internal feeling to the characters heightens the action. Hey, if you made it this far in the video, that shows that you care about story. Be sure to subscribe.